You're listening to Trek FM.
Want to join in the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode? Join the Babel Conference, our listeners' discussion group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field, and we'll look forward to seeing you there. Hello and welcome to the Indy Files in the 602 Club. I'm just one of your hosts, Matthew Rushing. I'm so excited to be back with everyone and with my esteemed colleague and Indy expert, Yancy Evans. Yancy, how you doing, man?
Been doing great, Matt. Just got back from a trip from Austria, and it was quite an adventure.
Oh man, well, I'm glad you were able to make it, and so because that's a long drive. And flying. So before we dive in, of course, you can find us all over the place on social media. We're at the 602 Club on X, Twitter. We're on Instagram at the 602 Club TFM. Of course, the entire network's on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM. We've got our website at tfn.fan. You can find us. You can also find us on Patreon, too, if you want to support the network and make sure that all that's happening here on the network keeps coming to you. Please go over to Patreon, patreon.com/TrekFM, and become part of the team and sponsor us there. But Yancy, like we always do, we've got a little rhythm going now that this is the 6th episode. And we always talk about the bookends, with the old Indy, whatever he's up to that day. And this one, I wanted to ask you just kind of what you thought of about this one as a bookend, him running into this male person, this male woman, who, catches him trying to get something out of a mailbox that he accidentally dropped in there by mistake.
Yeah, it's a cute little kind of side, almost like a side quest kind of thing. But it, thematically, it touches on the couple of things we're going to be talking about: delivering a message and kind of like spy work. It's just a frivolous little bookend. I actually found the ending far more hilarious. When he tells the girl, spoilers, for the ending. He tells the post lady who gives him back his sandwich, which he's inadvertently stuck in the mailbox, versus the package he had intended to send. He tells her, kind of a little cheeky remark that he always liked a woman in uniform.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It's a fun little, hey, he might be an old man, but he's still got it. So
yeah, she
but
chuckles
it's
along.
Not, yeah, it's not it's not nearly as, obviously not nearly as good as the bookends from the previous episodes. Yeah. We talked about where they were a lot more related to the story we're telling. It's just kind of a cute little intro into what this adventure is going to be about.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, this is definitely, I think this is probably the weakest one that we've had so far, just as an intro. Like you said, there's nothing wrong with it. It's cute and fun, but it does kind of lack any real punch. Like you said, the previous week's intro and exit with the bookend was really well done. And, you could argue, does it add anything to the story? And with that one, I mean, we had the discussion about it, and it really can add something. And you could take a lot away from that one. This one, not so much. And so... But
yeah, I think they realize that too, because it's probably the shortest bookend we've seen from any of the episodes. It's just like they get right to the adventure. It's just, here's old Indy, oh haha, comic little moment, and we're right in the adventure. So
yeah, what did you? So the setup of this one is obviously Indy has been a part of the war for a while now, and he has decided that instead of being on the front lines, he really wanted to be a part of something that was going to help him shut this down. He wants this war to end. And so he has joined the French military and the messaging service and relaying messages back and forth to try and, get this war resolved. And the mission he is sent on is a really interesting one. So I just wanted to first talk to you about this idea of watching this character who came into World War I, thinking that, oh, I'm gonna, I'm fighting for the good guys. I'm here to, stop atrocities from happening. I'm coming into this, I think, with a lot of machismo, and to where he is now. I mean, it's really almost a 180.
Yeah, I think what you're seeing is a lot of development with Indy, a lot of growth, because even from little things like he picks up a lot of what he learned from his previous commander in the Congo at the beginning of the episode, where he's a lot more no nonsense and very much, hey, let's not screw around because we've got a mission and we've got to accomplish this mission, and playtime's over. This is serious stuff. So he's picked up that, which I really enjoy, because that shows a level of how he's realizing the gravity of this whole thing. And I think also, having now been in the war a year and seeing kind of the futility of it, from all different sides, whether it's him on the front himself or being behind the scenes and seeing generals send, endless reams of soldiers into basically a threshing floor. Yeah. And he's just decided the best thing I can do is work in the intelligence services to try to hopefully at some point end this thing, so the killing will stop. And so I think that's it. I just love seeing that kind of growth with the character. And the other thing too is it also ties into we talked about this in one of the earlier episodes, how they're kind of building Indy's character for future movie, from the past movies, kind of showing how we got where we are. But there's also kind of some groundwork being laid for Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, because he goes from being in the intelligence services in France, and then we learn, in World War II in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, that he worked for the intelligence services of the U.S. during World War II. So it's just kind of an interesting little character arc he's on there.
Yeah, I mean, and I think in some ways that makes so much sense as to why he would do that, because, he sees that as an opportunity with the intelligence services and with being a courier is a way to hopefully end the war more quickly, right? If you can get the right intelligence and you can make the strikes needed with less loss of life and all of those things. And so I really did like that as well. I thought that it was a really great way to continue to kind of build the character and his development. I think it's interesting too, just how much of this show from the beginning here is really, dealing with teenage Indy instead of the kid Indy. It seems as though that the ratio is really lopsided and in favor of teenage Indy, which I think makes a little bit more sense because those episodes tend to be a little bit more action packed. And I think for viewers, I would guess they probably tend to be a little bit more interesting and slightly more what they were expecting than, what you get with the younger Indy. And so I really enjoyed, getting this opportunity to see the growth of the character throughout World War I. The other thing I was just thinking of too, and I think that this is something that actually makes the series really important in general, especially now. Then we were pretty removed from World War I, but at this point we're even more removed from it, and very few people have any kind of understanding about what happened during World War I, what was going on during World War I. And that's something that I really appreciate about, Indy being such a huge part of that era and it allowing us to have this understanding of what it was like. And, in many ways, you can kind of see, I feel like George utilizing the World War I era for the prequels right? Especially during the Clone Wars, where it's just such a mess with all these different factions and all of these different alliances, and creating all of this confusion. And it's. I was just really struck by how I feel like this show is almost more important in that sense now for kids to watch, to be able to have some understanding than it even was when it first was released.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about this episode is actually based on a real life incident that happened during World War One, which is the Empress Zita of Austria reached out to her brother, who was living on the other side, and was trying to facilitate an arrangement to get the Austrian monarchy out of the war, because the crown prince wanted, he just saw the futility of it. He saw what was happening in Russia, and he just thought the war had become a huge mistake. So this episode's actually grounded in some reality. Obviously, there was no Indiana Jones involved, but it's kind of a lot of the similar subterfuge went on behind the scenes to pass these letters along. And it is interesting. The other thing too, I found this episode in particular, you could just feel where George was going with the Clone Wars in just whole scenes in this episode. You could just, it's almost like a preview of what we're going to get in the Clone Wars animated series. These really interesting political side pieces, but they're still told at a level which, even a general audience can understand and actually enjoy.
Yeah.
Having Count Dooku as a major character in his Christopher Lee is just fantastic, just absolute brilliant choice, but you can see that you can almost see how everybody likes to jump on glom on the Nazis in World War II as a lot of impetus for Star Wars in general and the prequels and the original trilogy. But I would say Lucas may have actually been more influenced by the stuff around World War One, especially all the different political machinations going on behind the scenes and all these different alliances and, what was how people were playing one another. And this episode was really fascinating in that regard.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I mean, I think that the whole thrust of this episode about the Empress and the Emperor of Austria desiring a way to get them out of the war because they see the mistake that it has become. And again, it's because they've had their eyes opened to the futility of it all. And the fact that all of these interrelated alliances have drawn people into something that they really, in the end, realized they didn't want to be a part of in the first place. And so, and in that, again, you can see how this influences specifically the Clone Wars era, because there's that realization for so many of these factions as the Clone Wars drag on. Oh, we don't want to be a part of this. We don't want to be in this. This isn't what we thought it was going to be, kind of thing. I mean, you especially even get that, at the end with Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda realizing the mistake that's been made, and that they've been on the wrong side the whole time. And there's no way to do anything about it now because, you're, for lack of a better term, you're just screwed, and so I think all of that was really well done. I also just thought that the secret agent aspect of this, of, Indy too, because of his maturity, the understanding he has of this mission and the severity of what could happen if they got caught with any incriminating evidence is something that I thought was also really well done in the episode, because again, you're seeing him take another step as a character for somebody who truly kind of, in some places he's a little overzealous in it, but at the same time, you can really pick up that this character has kind of been through the ringer throughout this war, and it has put him much more on his guard, as Mad Eye Moody would say in Harry Potter, constant vigilance. And that's what, Indy has that for everything right now. But you've seen episodes, and you also get this sense that everything that he's been through has just kind of put him on edge, which, is a great representation, I think, of what happens when people are in war for long periods of time.
Yeah, and one of the other aspects of this episode, and it's one of the first thing, it may very well be the first thing that the famous stuntman and Harrison Ford double in the Indiana Jones films, Vic Armstrong, ever directed. Now, he went on to direct a few other things, but this is one of the first projects he ever directed. And he has this deft understanding of how to balance action, suspense, and humor. And I think a lot of that is derived having worked on the Indiana Jones films. There's a seriousness when it's needed, but there's also levity when it calls for a good joke every once in a while for some release. There's even a few nods to Star Wars in general, with some lines from the episode when they have to escape through a sewer, and they come out of the sewer, and the guy says, "What an incredible smell you've discovered." It's just there's a couple of great little nods like that, and it's just so deftly handled. And so the episode is never boring. It's always constantly on the go. This episode for me was just a complete joy, and I loved how he also gave a lot of opportunities for young Indy to show off his his older Indy swagger, from the films, because there's a ton of great action scenes in this episode. And it's just a lot of fun for him, and it's just great to see the character growing this way in this episode, and the show in general.
There's that great moment with him jumping off the train and onto the water spigot, just like he had when he was a kid in the opening to The Last Crusade, and of course then it did not work out well at all, and here it works out much better. And so I loved that. There's a lot of great references to older Indy material from the films, like just even the gunshots, it's quintessential Indy gunshot. But I also thought it was interesting to have Indy paired with these younger royals who are related to the Emperor and the Empress. And I thought that was fun to be able to watch Indy have to deal with, people who are of a certain class, and for Indy coming from the United States, that's not something he's had to deal a lot with. But I also really appreciated the way in which, he was just kind of able to win them over with his competence, and that's the thing that really stuck out to me, especially that scene, where, one of them shows him the letter that he had, and that lets everybody know who he is and, basically what they're about. And so, I loved that, again, Indy is shown as being somebody who's maturing, but also just somebody who, when he takes on a responsibility, he's good at it. He implies himself. He becomes the best at whatever that is. And that was just, it really goes to show how this character would turn into the character who would know how to do all of these things, in those films, because, man, Indy seems to be a jack of all trades in the show. And incredibly actually good at those things, right? Here you get to see how he's becoming that jack of all trades, and it's a really fun process to be a part of then in the show.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is like there's a certain aspect about especially the lead character, I forgot his name, the younger royal who got the letter from his sister. And I think Andy kind of also recognizes who he used to be when he first came into the European
Yeah.
theater,
Yeah.
where this is all just a grand adventure. And I'm not going to necessarily take this super seriously. And then it all hits you in the face. And then, so Andy's had a year of watching friends and comrades die, gruesome deaths. So he's not for, he's,
Yeah.
he understands the stakes. And what I love about the episode is as the episode goes along, the two brothers begin to
Yes.
realize the stakes of what's happening. And he even has a great scene at the end where he, kind of speaks out because Christopher Lee's character, the Count, is going to kind of downplay the terms of the negotiation a little bit because he's interested in protecting, the Crown Prince of Austria. And just he stands up and says, you seem to be more interested in protecting yourself, covering your own ass. And he's like, no, and then Count Dooku is like, I'm more interested in, covering the ass of the Crown Prince. It's a great scene, but it also shows that the young man is starting to, understand, confront the reality of the situation, as he didn't earlier in the episode. So,
yeah. I think one of the interesting aspects of this too is that, Karl the First says, I'm not interested in being the last emperor of Austria. And he sees that if they stay in this war, that's what's going to happen. That the Empire of Austria will cease to exist as we've known it, right? And that's also something that I'm really was really interested in, and I almost wish the episode had a little bit more time to dig into because, this isn't just for altruism of trying to save the boys on the front lines. This is about trying to save, at that point, a way of life that's going to end forever. And that was a really interesting thing to see too, because that's also a very Star Wars, end of the Clone Wars episode 3 type moment, when Yoda realizes, oh yeah, we're doomed. The Jedi way of life that we've known for 1,000 generations is about to end, and the peace that the galaxy is known is going to end as it's been known. And so that was a very, again, as somebody, I know cursory amounts for stuff about World War One. I've read books about World War One, but it is an incredibly complicated war. And there are so many moving pieces to it. And it is one of those things where the aftermath of that war leaves Europe forever changed. And not for the better, of course, because just, a few years later, another war would begin. And because of the aftermath of that First World War, or as Indy says, we didn't know there was going to be a part 2. We just called it the Great War. And so there's just really something about the way in which I think this show is utilizing the character of Indiana to help introduce us all to history in a way that's accessible and interesting. And it really does almost, and this is exactly what I think, Lucas is after. It makes you want to then go research those things further and know more.
Yep. Totally agree 100%. World War One is kind of a little bit of a passion of mine on the side, so I do know a bit about it. But if you do get the DVD box sets, there's some great documentaries on this episode in particular, and um, kind of what all the moving parts that are going on in Europe at the time. Because, as Carl says, this is a 1500-year monarchy that's about to end. If this doesn't go right, and he didn't want to be the last emperor, and he in fact was. So, you know, and the show's just doing a deft hand. I think it's Lucas combined with Frank Darabont writing a super smart script. And it's like Lucas and Darabont together are like magic. It's fascinating.
Yeah, no, I mean, we talked about him previously as well, and the fact that he's back writing this episode, you can kind of feel it, and it really is one of those things where, and Lucas in this sense is such ahead of his time in what he's trying to do with the show. Again, the production value of this show is great too. The fact that they're filming, in real European locations to make this work, to make it feel real. And the chase sequences, are actually up on top of real rooftops, and,
right.
The train sequence feels, and like it's filmed on a location that feels like it's there, you never question whether or not, I'm between France and Germany and Austria and all these places. It's wonderful. It's really, really well done. And that's the joy of getting to kind of go back and rewatch the show. And I do have to give them real credit, because I always watch the bookend on YouTube, and then I'll go to the DVD copy and watch the episode there. And I'm so surprised by how well the DVDs hold up. They look so good, and I don't know if it's just my television and my actual, 4K player doing a great job of up-resing what's there, but it looks fantastic. And that just goes to show the quality to which this show was produced from the beginning. And that's the one thing that I think I love so much about George Lucas, is that the man spared no expense when it came to creating the things that he wanted to create. And yet at the same time, if you were to look at what he created, he wasn't trying to break the bank.
No.
He was very judicious with his money. But it never feels like that's the case, right? It feels like he just spared no expense.
Yeah, like if you look at the cast of this episode, you've got, Mr. Diplomatic Immunity from Lethal Weapon 2, I don't remember his name. He's a great, wonderful British character actor who plays, the heavy in the episode.
Yeah,
he's only in a few
scenes,
fantastic. But he's got this kind of Darth Vader presence about him. Every time he's in a scene, you're like, oh God, Indy's going to get caught here. And it's handled so well. Then you've got the gal, Jennifer, I forgot how to pronounce Jennifer L. She played Elizabeth Bennet in the famous BBC Pride and Prejudice series.
Yeah.
She plays Zeta, and she does a wonderful job with and that's one thing, again, back to Darabont. She doesn't have a lot to do in the episode, but when she has stuff to do, it's really important stuff, and she's saying really important stuff, and her acting is so top notch. So she was at the beginning of her career. She had barely done anything. So he was able to find all of these quality actors, him probably, let's be real. Rick McCallum probably had a lot to do with that, knowing where to find the talent in Europe, at little expense. And so this episode is just chock full of great actors doing really good work with a really good script.
Yeah, it's funny with Joss Ackland, who plays the Prussian in this episode as the heavy. You know, I always think of him,
that's him.
as the Russian ambassador in The Hunt for October.
Hunt for October, yep.
And so you've lost another submarine. It's so great. So no, it's like you said. I think that's the other thing that I'm constantly surprised about these episodes is who shows up in them. Again, we talked about the fact that you have the great Christopher Lee in here. I mean, does it get any better? No. So just love it. I mean, I think it's phenomenal, hands down. And so, Yancy, for Austria 1917, what do you think you'd rate it?
I'd give it an easy 4 stars. Easy. 4 out of 5. Just a really fun adventure, but with some really good, really great spy adventure, but with some really interesting points and interesting things to talk about the war and about governments and how they work, and how does one get oneself out of a conflict that they've gotten themselves into. Just really top-notch all around. So 4 out of 5 for me, easy. Yeah,
I'm right there with you. I think this was a really good episode. It was an episode that is pretty gripping from start to finish. I think I enjoyed just the entire storyline of watching Indy deal with the ramifications of all the things that are going on in World War I. His maturity growth, seeing him actually as a character who is matured in many different facets of who he is. And I just loved getting this behind the scenes of a true story, minus Indy, that this is something that really happened, and it didn't go well, and just it makes you think of alternate history. What would have happened to Austria, and what would have happened to the war if they had been able to extricate themselves from it? And so, but Yancy, if anybody wants to catch up with you, talk with you, more Indiana Jones or whatever else you've got going on, where would they find you?
Well, they can find me on the usual social medias like Twitter, Threads, Instagram. My handle is usually at Gallandro1. So that's Gallandro, and then the number 1, named after a Bryan Daly villain from the Han Solo trilogy. And then on Facebook, you just find me under my name, Yancy Evans. I'm the fat white guy on there, because there are a couple of us on there. But that's usually where you can find me, and I'm more than happy to talk Indy, Star Wars, whatever. I'm open.
Awesome, man.
I love talking.
Well, you could find me all over social media on the name Matt Rushing02. Of course, you could find me here on the network outside the 602 Club. We're talking about all those franchises we love with the great Star Trek talk that Chris Jones and I do. So please check all of those shows out, like Warp 5, The Orb, Artificial Tango, Saddle Up, all of those things. It's so much fun. You can also find me over on the Nerd Party Network with 2 shows. One is called Owl Post, talking about every single chapter of the Harry Potter series, and Aggressive Negotiations, as John Mills and I talk about Star Wars each and every week. But thank you so much for joining us. And y'all come back now, you hear?